Hey, we're back. It is the Ray Lytle Show. I'm Ray. And I have a guest. I'm not alone. The one and only, my favorite school board member. Because literally he's the only one that will talk to me. Scott McFarland from Sub-District 3?
Correct.
How about that?
Setting the bar real low.
Welcome to the show, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Scott, if you haven't heard, Scott is in charge of, I read this in the paper, and I was told, you know, the school board made a point of making it. You are you're in charge of the committee to hire the new superintendent. So where's the new superintendent? Where are they?
Well, your news is a little old. I was.
That's the last thing we heard, though. You and Judith Johnson are somehow on some committee.
The old board asked me and Miss Johnson to work on that because we were one of the few that were guaranteed to be back on the board coming up. Mm-hmm. And then when the new board took over, the new board basically took over that search. So
you did work on it?
I did, and I still am, but I'm not running anything.
Okay, but they put you. They said you guys are supposed to do it, so you started the search.
We started looking for ways to handle a search.
So you came up with.
Yeah, I have been for several months now saying that I'd like to see a national search, and I think that we need to go with an outside provider to do that search, because if we did in-house, we'd have to keep our staff on overtime, or we'd have to hire people anyway to come in and do that search. So last night, the board voted to go with an outside contractor to do that search.
Okay, but how long have you been asking the board to okay this?
I've been asking 2 boards now, so I'm really happy that the board...
So this started before the election.
Yes.
Where you went, they said, Scott, you and Judith, you guys, you're forming a committee, and you are going to be the ones to do this. And you said, okay, let me crunch some numbers here. Carry this. Oh, that's going to be way too expensive on our tax dollars to do that. So I'll tell you what, rather than us pay for it and pay these people overtime and hire new people to do it, we realize it's going to be less expensive. It's going to be cheaper to have an outside firm do it. Here's the outside firm, and they're going to get us the best person possible. And then the board said, whoa, not so fast.
Well, we didn't even get that far. I kind of wish we did. But what we did was we went out and started talking to community members. We started looking for companies that do the searches. And then it kind of stalled around election time, because it was election time and no one really wanted to push the issue. When this new board
So the old board didn't want to vote on it.
Pretty much.
Because they're like, well, we don't want to. All right, I understand. You know what? I'll give them that.
I wish they did. I spoke out several times asking to get the ball rolling, but unfortunately we didn't. That being said...
Who was opposed to that?
Folks on the old board.
The ones that are gone, or the ones that are still around?
Mostly the ones who are no longer with us on the board.
Susan White.
Sure.
All right.
So the new board came on, and we had 2 community meetings before that new board got set, actually that weekend before everyone got sworn in. And we've had 2 other special meetings where we've interviewed search firms. We interviewed 4 search firms. We had another one turn paperwork in but didn't interview with us. So
you're not even interviewing superintendents yet. You were just interviewing the firms to hire to find a superintendent for you.
And
these are the people that they look through piles of resumes in different school districts. They say, hey, this person would be perfect. So they sort of headhunt, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So how this is going to work now is last night the board voted, and I voted along with them. I think it was an unanimous vote to ask a search firm to come down and set up a contract with us if they're willing, which I'm sure they will be. They'll be happy to take our money. And then we will set up a timeline. Now, this is me personally. I hope that timeline's quick. I don't want us to have 4 superintendents in 1 year.
Who will set the timeline?
That will be up to the board.
Okay, well, all right. But this is the same board that put you. When did they announced? When did they announce? I mean, they announced in April that you were going to start the search.
Yeah,
all right.
It was end of March, early April.
End of March.
But keep in mind, this is a new board now too.
But it is June, and they just now okayed the thing that you asked for however many months ago.
Yep. And believe me, I'm happy we've finally done it.
Now Bob Lemming, who's there now, he's the acting
Interim superintendent.
Is Dr. Walter Bilton is no longer there?
No, he is correct.
He doesn't keep office hours or anything. He's completely out of there.
Nope, he ended his service with us.
Although he's still getting paid, he's not there.
Yes.
And he's receiving a paycheck as part of that thing?
It was a lump
or is it
sum
one
payment,
lump sum?
and then there's also COBRA involved too.
So they're still paying
looking for a new job.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so he's out of the picture. Lemming is showing up, doing his thing. But Lemming is only on a 100-day contract because of his pension thing?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
He's a retiree from the district.
Explain why it's the 100 days.
As a retiree from the district or any school district, you can only work for 100 days until you have to come out of retirement.
So he's receiving his pension from his retirement, and also he's receiving a paycheck from you guys, or I guess it's a payment on,
it's based on the 100 days, but yes.
Yeah, a paycheck on his contract that he signed, which was for 100 days. If he works more than 100 days,
he can't.
Then he would have to come out of retirement.
Which he's not going to do. So he's set for 100 days. Now that's
when is the 100 days up?
It's pretty close, but here's the deal. The 100 days are based on a fiscal year. So come next month, he can restart, and he'd be at another 100 days.
So he's only allowed to work 100 days a year.
Correct.
Do Saturdays and Sundays count?
No, and actually he's been taking some time here and there, a couple days a week, to make sure he's going to stretch out to the end of June. So he's been doing everything he can.
So when does the fiscal year end?
Our fiscal year ends with June, so June 30th.
So June 30th. As of July 1st, he can start another 100 days.
Correct.
So that gives you a little over 3 months. That means
we did the math, and if we do it right, he can stay
maybe 5 months.
Until end of November, early December, which would be perfect for a timeline if we wanted a new superintendent to come on in January.
Okay, but I mean, this is just me as an outsider. So what superintendent's going to start in the middle of a school year?
I think we can find a superintendent who wants to work in an urban district, a very diverse district, and wants to make positive changes for a district that could use some positive changes right now. I really think the poll is going to be interesting.
Are we looking at guys who are out of work or people who have jobs?
You're basically going to be looking for people who have positions now because you're going to want somebody with experience coming in. And that could be somebody who works in this district, a neighboring district, or a district out in New York or California. It just depends on who the best candidate is. At least for me personally, that's what I feel. But if you really look at it, you got 2 months till kids go back to school. So now is really crunch time. You're right, and I'm not a fan of how this went down. And this is not this new board. Again, I believe that they are moving, and I really do appreciate them moving on this. But as most know, I was not a fan of how this all went down in the spring, and I still think that we did a disservice in the way that we went about the superintendent, the last superintendent, and then also this search starting off. Now, hopefully, as a new board, we can start working on this, get the timeline set, get everything in place, and get this search going. So in 2014, hopefully early 2014, we have a new full-time superintendent.
But you need to get one prior to the 100 days being up for Lemming too, right? I mean, wouldn't that be?
Yeah, you need to factor in though if Mr. Lemming can go until, and this is assumption that he wants to stay on, and he has said that he will do what he has to do to help us out. If he goes until early December, say, then the school year's over. We could have somebody else act as an interim for those 2 or 3 weeks while the next person comes online.
He comes in like January,
really,
February.
There would not be a huge gap if the timeline worked out that way. Now, if the timeline doesn't work out that way, I'm only one vote on the board, then if the board decides to extend this out and have somebody come on July 1, then yes, we're going to have another interim come in sooner or later.
So wait a minute, it's a definite that Lemming's going to be the guy?
That's
July 1st, or is there a chance we can get somebody else in there?
That would all be determined by the board. My assumption, and everything I have heard, is that Mr. Lemming will stay on past July 1.
Right. But you don't know how the other board members are going to
Exactly. I mean, if the board sits down and says, "Hey, July 1, we want to go in this direction," that's up to a majority of the board. But from what my understanding is, Mr. Lemming will still be superintendent July 1.
It sounds to me we're no closer to getting It just sounds to me like we're no closer to getting a superintendent than we were 4 months ago.
If we were talking on Sunday, I would agree with you. But last night that vote did help. Because now
So
the board has
we
said
have
we
the
want to do
firm
this search.
that is going to start.
Exactly. That was the first true vote saying we want to move forward with this search and this is how this search is going to go. And then actually next week we scheduled a special meeting that we're going to vote on the final contract, hopefully if we can get these folks to sit down and get a contract with us. And I'm also hoping we can get a timeline firmed up. So we say we want somebody in on X date. Now, it's important to keep in mind, too, if we look at all the people who apply and we don't like the candidates, we're not going to be hurt by that. We're held harmless by the search firm. So if we look at the first batch of candidates and say, sorry, not going to work out for us, let's shoot for July 1 instead, they will continue the search at no extra charge to continue that
Okay.
on. So we're going to get the best superintendent possible. I hope we can get one early, but if not, we'll pick the best candidate.
Will we, is there, I mean, are we got a man, woman, Caucasian, African American, Asian? Is there any kind of thing you're looking for in particular?
Here are my criteria that I personally am looking for. I want somebody with urban experience.
So they must have worked in a city.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you had to be superintendent, but at least somewhere in administration to where you dealt with multiple schools and multiple types of people.
So not somebody who's working at just one school.
There's no comparison there, and I don't think they would work out. I want to make sure that they have experience dealing with tough budgets. Obviously, we're in a deficit right now, and we need to get out of that deficit quickly and rebuild our reserves, and we need somebody with experience in doing that.
So somebody who's dealt with a similar situation
Some
before.
kind of fiscal experience in dealing with those situations. And I want somebody who has a vision for this city. Somebody who's going to come in here and say, I see Springfield as this. This is where we can be in 10 years. Let's work with the city. Let's work with the county. Let's work with the state and get this done.
So you're saying that's your personal criteria. Do you think that's in line with the rest of the board?
From what I've heard, I think other folks will tell you probably a few different ones too, but I think at a core, that's what we're looking for. We need somebody with that experience where they can come in and we're not doing a year of training. That's the key.
And everybody is. I mean, does your other board members talk to you about it? I mean, you guys have some sort of. Is there a consensus among all of you? Do you talk off or away from the meetings as well? Say, coming up with that
on one-on-one basis, we chat, but as a board, we don't meet outside of meetings because of what means that
you're not allowed to. Yeah.
But just based on what people said during the campaigns, based on what they've said in public and to the press and all of that, it seems like we're kind of moving in the same direction, which is good and positive. The last thing I want to see, and the last thing anyone wants to see, is a 4-3 vote to decide this thing. Yeah. So there needs to be some kind of consensus, and that's what I'm trying to work for. And my colleagues, I believe, are working towards the same thing.
Can you hang out just a little bit longer?
Love to.
We're running a little late. It is the Ray Lytle Show. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Back with more of Scott McFarland, our fine school board member from Subdistrict 3, on the Ray Lytle Show.
You're listening to the Lytle Show on News Radio WTAX.
Play it, Barb. She's got her bandana on, swiveling her hips, throwing up a peace sign. Yeah. Hey, my guest is Scott McFarland, school board member, who was at last night's meeting. Okay, what's the deal with, by the way, to recap, we still don't have a superintendent. And Scott's trying to make that happen. The board finally took the recommendation that you and Judith Johnson made. How long ago?
We've been talking about it for about 3 or 4 months now.
And they finally voted on it last night and said, yes, we're going to bring in an independent firm to begin the search. So the search that was supposed to start 4 months ago is actually going to begin
soon, hopefully.
But
now,
not today.
Keep in mind, this board has only been sat for 3 meetings, so it's not all on them.
And now you have a full board, since we know that Moore was at beat Eastville by 1.
That's correct.
Is it true you were one vote away in Subdistrict 5? Is that where it was?
Yeah.
You were 1 vote in Subdistrict 5 away from being school board president.
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that.
Come on, would somebody have nominated you?
Somebody nominated for vice president, and I didn't accept it, so I won't speculate on how it's going. But that's we.
How does it work? How does someone get elected president?
They nominate someone for president and vice president.
Can you nominate yourself?
You could. Usually people don't.
Would you won't?
Yeah.
You have shame. You wouldn't do that. Is that what you're saying?
No, but we elected a president.
Right.
He's running the meetings, so.
But he hadn't even been on the school board till he's been at school board 3 meetings. How's he president?
Yeah, the board.
That's how it works.
And I voted for him too. So.
But I mean, in the first meeting, you voted.
Yeah, we come in, we get sworn in. The first thing we do is we elect leadership.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just a board. It's leader of a board. I guess you don't necessarily need.
You run the meetings, you handle the gavel, you set the agenda.
You just got to know the protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me get on to this. Now we know that stuff. Let me get on to this. Residency. You have residency for administrators with District 186?
Yeah, there's a policy in place that if you're going to be an administrator, basically principal or work in the 1900 or what have you, then you need to live in the city limits.
And how is it enforced, or how is it, like, how do you know where people live?
Well, we know based on the address they give us, but from what some board members are saying is that we needed to look into that more because we're seeing that some folks may not live within the district. I haven't seen any of that information. I haven't seen any of those addresses, and to be honest, I haven't asked for them.
But this came up last
some
night,
other board
right?
members are talking about it, yes.
And they said that, you have administrators who don't live in Springfield, and they have to live, or not in Springfield, but they can live in Jerome or
within the district.
The
So yes, that would
Grandview
include
whatever,
Jerome, Grandview, Southern View, all that.
But you can't live in Chatham or Riverton, Sherman, or
Exactly. You got to be within 186 boundaries.
or Tallulah, Loami. Maybe someone living in Loami? Is that the concern?
I have no idea what the concern is, honestly. But
I
that's,
would doubt. By the way, I doubt they're living in Loami.
No, you never know.
But what is there somebody? Why would that? I don't understand why that came up.
Well, one of our board members, Mr. Lopez, brought up that he wanted us to review the policy and also review where the information in terms of who is living where to see if we are following that policy. And so I think coming forward, they talked about it last night. I'm sure they'll talk about it some more. They want to take a look at that. Now, one thing I mentioned last night, and I don't disagree with the policy. I think in terms of our administrators, we have something set to where they should be living in the district that they serve. But we also have to keep in mind that it wasn't just them violating the policy. When the district hired these folks, they either knew about it or didn't check. And they hired and put them in positions.
Well,
so
if
now
you've got a policy, you got to have a way to enforce it. You got to have
Exactly.
some kind of way to make sure that
and so
people are following.
You've got some great people working in positions, and they may be not living in the district. So we're going to have to figure out how we want to handle that.
So that's what his concern was, and he's a newly elected too, right?
And he's the vice president.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
Yes.
Well, how you have two people that have never? That's another story for another time. Okay, so they're looking at that residency thing.
Yes.
And let me ask you, can I ask you this? Why did it come up for you guys? And I'll let you go in like 2 minutes.
Oh, you're fine.
Why did it come up? What does the railroad got to do with you guys? Like with the 10th Street corridor got to do with you guys? Why did that come up last?
It came up because I brought it up in new business. My sub-district is Sub-District 3. Which goes from basically Peoria Road out to Dirksen and from downtown up to Sangamon Avenue. So the 10th Street corridor cuts my sub-district in half. And my concern has been, and I've brought this up to the city, I brought it up to IDOT over the past year now, is 10th Street corridor is going to come very, very, very close to Lanphier High School. If you know the layout,
how close?
Well, if you know the layout of North Grand, you're driving down North Grand heading east, you have the EPA building, the Sagamo building,
right,
and then you have Lanphier. That Sagamo building is going away. The 10th Street corridor.
Are they tearing down the EPA building?
According to the map, the train tracks are going to go right through the building.
I thought they were going to take over the train tracks that are on the other side of the Ball Diamond.
Well, those are the 19th Street tracks. The 10th Street tracks are the ones that come down 11th Street right there and then start shimmying over towards 9th Street. That's the 10th Street corridor.
So they're going to tear down. The plan is to tear down EPA building, and that means that
You're going to have high-speed rail at about half block from the high school.
Oh, wow.
And then along with that, on North Grand, their plans, and these are plans based on a year ago they released them. They're on the IDOT website. You're going to have an underpass right there between 9th and 11th, and then a large overpass that will be in front of Memorial Stadium, Robin Roberts, between 11th Street and 19th Street. So you're going to have high-speed rail, and then perpendicular to that, you're going to have underpass, overpass. And my concern is making sure that our students are safe in that environment. Now, I'm not naive. It's going to happen. There's a vote tonight for both the county and the city. I'm sure they're going to vote for it.
They still don't know where they're getting the money from, but yeah, that's where they want to put it.
But they're moving forward. So what I want to see happen is the district needs to be involved in the process every step of the way. So we are making sure that our kids are safe, that our buildings are safe, and that we're doing this properly. It's one of those where, as you mentioned, the school district is the most important thing for this city.
Well, yeah.
If you want this city to thrive, if you want more jobs and more money in the city, you have to have a strong school district. One of the ways we do that is protecting our facilities and, most importantly, protecting our students. And that's why I want us to be involved in the process.
Have they started cleaning out the schools that are closing?
I haven't received much of a report on that yet. That was actually, I'm planning on asking more about that coming up here at the next meeting because both those schools, Wanlis and Pleasant Hill, are in my sub-district as well. The students are actually moving to Feischens, which is where CCPA was housed before. So those students will be consolidated and moved over to Feischens, and that process is happening now. I know the teachers have started moving their things over to the new school.
Well, I used to work, when I was a kid growing up, I worked at a Bunnell Junior High School and Bunnell Elementary in the summer, and I had to paint. I got the job painting every single classroom. Oh, it was brutal. It was. It was fun, but it was brutal and lonely and everything. But yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, the guys like custodial people, they work all summer long, like from 5 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And we have shifts going
every single
all the time.
day. Yeah. So these guys, and you're going to be closing down buildings. Are they selling those buildings?
I don't know what they're doing at the buildings yet. I've heard talks of selling. I've heard talks of utilizing it for something else. My key, and it's been this way since they started talking about this, is I want those buildings used by somebody. The worst thing that can happen is if you shutter those two buildings up, especially with both of them, with Pleasant Hill and with Wanlis. They're the center of those neighborhoods. Yeah. Wanlis is the best thing that Grandview had going for it. It's now gone. So in order to help those folks and make sure that that community survives, something needs to go in there. Same with Pleasant Hill. So if the district isn't going to use it, we need to sell it to somebody who's going to use it.
But last time you had a guy that wanted to buy a school to put some condos in or whatever, they wouldn't sell it.
Well, that was a different situation. You're talking about Enos there.
Yeah.
And actually, we discussed it again
I guess you
last
really
night.
couldn't put condos in Wanlis.
Well, no, probably not.
But I'm just.
But with Enos, we had a plan, and we still have a plan. And if you drive over now, the construction's going on right now. With Enos, we had a plan to where we needed to utilize that land. We were going to put in a larger building, about the same size of building, but a more modern building. We're going to have areas where the buses can get off the streets, again, to protect the kids. We're going to have more play area for them. We're going to have outside courts for them. It's going to be a wonderful 4.2-acre area. And to get that done, the old building had to go.
And that's for a new school or for?
It's for a new elementary school, the new
Also, the new one being built.
And the students are going to be moving in here in the fall.
Okay.
They're going to be in the new building.
Awesome.
So actually, we're going to have 2 new buildings in the fall. We're going to have Matheny, Withrow, and Enos.
Look at that. You answered all the questions.
I try.
Except the kids over on the other side, they're going to have to go into Old Feischens, which is how old?
Well, and you know what? That's the thing.
How old Feischens?
Feischens has been around quite a while. I'm not sure the answer to that. So it used to be a high school, used to be an academy, used to be CCPA.
So those kids, you say, hey, sorry that these kids on this side of town, they get to go to a brand new school, but you get to go to Feischens, which is like 800 years old.
Those kids are my kids because that's my area. So that's why I fought tooth and nail not to close down those schools. And I lost. I was overruled 5-2 on that vote. But now we need to make sure that those kids have the same opportunities that everyone else does too. And I agree. I think in the last budget cuts, it was obvious where those cuts happened. It happened on the northeast side of town. CCPA, Wanlis, Pleasant Hill, all on the northeast side of town. And I don't want this to be an us versus them. But, we need to make sure that when we're having to reduce these budgets, that one side of town, much like the 10th Street corridor, we need to make sure one side of town is not hurting to help other people.
But it is hard, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but it is hard when you go to these kids on one side of town and say, hey, you know what? Sorry, but these kids over here get a brand new school that, look, we're even tearing down this one building to give them an extra playground room. Meanwhile, you're going to move into this building that's 100 years old.
You're preaching to the choir on that one. Now, keep in mind, though, too, there's a new school in my area originally that just opened up about 10 years ago. So it's not like there hasn't been anything going on in my area, but there needs to be more. With Lanphier, it's nowhere near accessible. If you're in a wheelchair, you're not going to be able to get through Lanphier's second and third floor. It's just impossible.
How long before we've got to look at replacing Lanphier and Springfield High? And
they were talking about replacing Lanphier before I got on the board. The key is funding.
They'll be talking about it long after you leave the board.
One of the things we did a couple of years ago was we asked for a referendum, a sales tax referendum, to build new facilities and replace some of our facilities, and it got voted down. And I think the community needs to decide right now, what do you want? Do you want 100-year-old buildings or more? Yeah. Or do you want some high schools and some elementary schools and middle schools that we can really be proud of?
I could talk school board. I literally could talk. And by the way, I'm not even my child goes to Glenwood or goes to Chatham.
We won't hold it against her.
But seriously, I could talk Springfield School Board all day. It's so fascinating to me. I keep fighting the good fight, my friend. We've touched on a lot of issues. I think that people, I hope they enjoyed the interview and were enlightened a little bit. Hopefully we'll have a superintendent
My hope is
at some point before 2014.
Well, I'm thinking right when we hit 214 is what I'm looking for, January. But again, we'll
Mr. Lemming been doing a good job?
I think so. I really do appreciate him coming in. You know, he was our interim HR director, and then we spurted on one day saying, hey, we're going to move you up. And I think he's done a great job.
He's a guy who he retired, but he's been working harder as retiree than he was. He's working harder than any retiree I know. I'll tell you that. He's come back and given his time, and he's getting paid for it. But nonetheless, he has stepped up.
No, his heart's with the district. I've talked to him quite a few times, and he really does care about these kids. And I'm hoping the next person. I
thought Dr. Milton cared about the kids, but nobody seemed to care about that either.
Well, I was one of those folks who was saying that we didn't need to spend money to do it the way we did it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, again, I tend to be overruled quite a bit, and that's what happened.
Well, listen, I wish you luck. Thanks for being on, Scott McFarland.
Anytime.
You're a fine school board member here, District 126. I thank you for being on. Good luck, and keep you up to date. We'll have you on again, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks, sir.
It is the Ray Lytle Show. Take a break and then say goodbye right after these.